So Daniel is a Senior Vice President of Enterprise Security and Architecture and Capabilities at Paramount. Welcome, Daniel. Okay, Itzik, I believe you're the CEO and co-founder of Entro. Okay, Rahul Bhardwaj. Rahul is the Vice President of Cyber and Data Privacy and Head of Information Security Americas at Excel. And then finally, Itay Mesika. Itay is the CEO and co-founder of Axiom Security. Okay, so we're going to focus on 4 key NHI stats that hopefully will blow your human mind. We've taken them from our ultimate guide to non-human identities, where we sourced all great research from many organizations and picked out 4 key stats that we hope you'll find insightful. Okay, stat number 1. Secret sprawl is a major problem in the industry. There was a staggering 12.8 million occurrences of secrets found in GitHub. Let's start this discussion. Rahul, do you want to share your perspectives on secret sprawl?
Sure, Lalit. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here and sharing my thoughts. Hopefully, trying to learn something from all of you. I think, Lalit, like you, when we looked at these stats and we went through the entire report with my team, it was mind-boggling. And then you go and read the trend in the latest cyber incident, which resulted from this secret sprawl, like Uber losing IP or New York State Department here had a major data breach in 2024, all leading up to it. I think the other interesting fact of the same source, if you'll go and read, which was even more scary, looking at the 12.8 million, 90% of those secrets stays active at least 5 days, even when you have been notified that there is a secret leak to the author. 5 days. So as a CISO, every minute counts. A mean time of 5 days for a known vulnerability or a known secrets out there. One of the things which keeps me up at the night led to a much larger program on NHI and how we are looking to have visibility, look into our blast radius around this, and having a central program to monitor and look at it. If these stats and these concerns doesn't bother you as a security professional, I think I will highly encourage to go through what Lalit and his team is publishing and the sources we mentioned out here.
Okay, thank you, Rahul. Anybody else from the panel would like to also share their thoughts on the secrets problem?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I think the main problem over here is that developers, SREs, DevOps are the ones who are usually creating those non-human identities and secrets, permissioning them, using them. And it's much easier to commit them into code than to store them in a secure location like a vault, which is a secure storage location. It's much easier for them to do that. So they're just committing them into code, and then that code is being exposed outside. So those non-human identities, those secrets are credentials that applications are using to authenticate against services those application needs, like databases or storage account. And that basically means there's over 12 million of those credentials exposed outside that everybody can actually take and use and breach that environment. So definitely crazy number, for sure.
Okay, thank you, Itzik. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just add to that, I think the challenge is that non-human identities are just created at such a significant scale compared to our traditional human identities. It's decentralized, it's across all of our platforms, and it's a critical component of enabling the agility in the cloud and just in our cloud technologies. But the challenge is, how do we track that? When we think about it from our human identity, it's typically through a centralized managed team, Active Directory based or similar. We have a bit better control over it than we do at this. But here we've got many of our lines of businesses are creating their own NHIs, and we just don't have visibility into it. So, and they're just moving at the speed of business, and they're not, necessarily giving it a second thought. And as an information security practitioner, right, we're trying to figure out how do we help them and how do we enable business? How do we allow them to do that, to, enrich platforms and pull the data and share data between platforms to get the results? How do we do that? But how do we provide them governance that enables that in a secure way and manages the risk?
Thanks. And would anyone like to talk a little bit about maybe static secrets, which is kind of part of the secret sprawl problem and I guess dynamic secrets, kind of where we want to head to. I know we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a lot more today. Anyone want to share some perspectives around static secrets?
Well, static secrets, we at Paramount, we do a lot of development, particularly on our streaming platforms, and again, kind of similar to what I just said a few minutes ago, everyone wants to move at, the speed of business. And sometimes, taking the time to figure out how to use a vault, set up a vault, right? And also equally as challenging as sharing that key through insecure mechanisms like Slack or email or other mechanisms. And then you have this, record of it, or you have it in Confluence. But I think the challenge is that, again, educating our developers, providing them the tools, right, to do this quickly and efficiently, and integrating this type of mindset, into the developer pipelines.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Okay, let's move on to maybe stat number 2. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about NHI breaches. So 68% of enterprises endured a successful cyber attack from compromised NHIs, and 25% have encountered multiple attacks. So Itzik, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
For sure. Again, I was possibly breached by non-human identities. So by IBM Cost of Cloud Breach and Verizon Report, which are leading the reports out there, and then Gartner as well, it's the second most frequent attack vector out there, the number one most costly or devastating attack to an organization. And again, I think the main problem is that usually organizations don't really know how many non-human identities they have, where they are, how they are being utilized. They are not monitoring them, and they are being used by developers, which are scattering them around. So it does make sense for me. I think that organizations or the entire cybersecurity folks around the industry are investing a lot in human identity. Usually those non-human identities have more permissions than the human ones. And we invested so much in the human identity to protect that. We have MFA over there, and SSO and other tools are in place, but we didn't really add anything specifically for non-human identities. And it's great to see that everybody is starting to pay attention to it, and hopefully we will see that shifts and decline. Then hopefully we will have less breaches as people will adopt more solutions that help them identify those non-human identity, monitor them, and protect them.
Thanks, Itzik. Maybe Itay, do you want to?
I'll add, I think the sheer magnitude of the problem is the volume and the lack of visibility to NHI. I think you can only protect what you know, and that's the biggest challenge with NHI. I think you have to look at the secure code practices. You have to train your coders not to put those static secrets in the code base, and then the dynamic NHI is a whole different problem, how to tackle and address them. But I think the lack of visibility is the biggest challenge. And then I think the multiple breaches or multiple attacks, there was an interesting fact, because in today's ecosystem, the programs are interdependent on each other. Entry into one piece of code or one component of your program can easily open up gates for a larger attack surface. So I think that's why the challenge is on the visibility, identifying them, discovering them, and trying to put a good structured program to mitigate this risk.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on now to our stat number 3. Okay, so this correlates with the question I asked earlier, but in a recent survey, 68% of respondents said they didn't know how to address NHI risks. So Daniel, do you want to maybe share some thoughts on this?
Be happy to. Yeah, it's a significant challenge. I think, for us at Paramount, I mean, it starts at, defining what's the problem, right? What's the problem space? So who are stakeholders? Where are what technology platforms are involved, right? And then, looking for a technology provider that, will work with you, that fits with your company culture. All of these, a lot of the companies like Entro and a lot of their peers in the industry, I mean, they're only a few years old, right? So the opportunity is to work with, find a partner that can work with you and help you really address those risks. And I think identifying those key risks are what's important. Now, the question is, once you start integrating the platform into your ecosystem, then you kind of get these mind-popping, eyeball-popping numbers of what do I do with all of this? So I think that's where you kind of got to, you can't boil the ocean. You got to take a look at and start somewhere. Probably start with your highest risks, right, that the platform identifies, review those with your technology providers, review those with your stakeholders, right, validate them, and then start working through them just, bit by bit, right? The other areas that I see as an important way to tackle this are low-hanging fruit. So I think on an earlier stat, I talked about, how many NHIs are just inactive, right? Significant numbers that haven't been used in, I think typically 6 months or more. That just increases your attack surface significantly. And when these accounts often have, or these NHIs often have escalated permissions, addressing that helps reduce your attack surface really quickly and efficiently. But it's a big problem, and there's a lot to look at. I think, just take it bit by bit, right? Thank you.
Yeah, look, I would fully agree. Taking a risk-based approach is critical to solving this problem. You're not going to tackle this elephant in the room in a year. A previous CISO said, look, why can't we fix it in a year? And now they say this is the hardest problem they've ever faced in their career. Just one sort of insight we'll give you at an organization we worked at. We scanned for hard-coded passwords. The first scan found 1 million potential hard-coded passwords in source code. So you can imagine just the effort to fix those, secure them, clean up inactive accounts. It's a monumental task. Anybody else want to share some final insights on?
I think both of you touched upon how to address a legacy problem on NHI and ongoing monitoring, obviously. I think you also touched upon the cultural shift we need to have. I think that's also a big hurdle, talking to your development community, training them on secure coding practices, and that's another battle in itself.
Itay, do you want to add anything from your...
No, I agree with the team, and I'll share later.
All right, let's move on to the final stat. Okay, mismanaged NHIs. In one survey, 97% of NHIs were found to have excessive privileges, increasing unauthorized access and the depth and breadth of the attack surface. So Itay, do you want to kick off and share some perspectives on this?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. The over-provisioned access of not only the non-human identities, but also any type of identity in the organization. And I believe that the best way to secure any type of identity is by design, and to do that inside the process, not just after the fact. And that's usually when we work with companies, we look at the preventative, detective, and corrective controls that we have. And if we look at the preventative controls, is how can we enforce least privilege access and just-in-time access by design when we create those processes to avoid the problem after the fact. So in order to do that, we must simplify the process for end users. Because if we are not creating a process and just look at the visibility is important, of course, but if we will not create the right process to fix the problem from its roots, we will not really help the end users, and we will see the problems coming up again and again. And when we look at the process, we can separate that to like what we're familiar with the human identities, because that's the same problem. So how can you create a self-service and simple way to request just-in-time access and provide the right access to the right identities for the right amount of time and for the right reasons? And then you have the workflows of how you can automate or delegate those approvals. It's doesn't matter if it's a human or non-human, because it's still humans that controls the non-human identities in most of the cases. And it's the humans that creates the access and provides the access to the non-human identities. So when we will control the process, and our job is to support what the team spoke about also before, the mindset, the cultural change that we need to work on, and to educate our employees, because most of the employees don't understand the risk around AI and NHI identities. They think everything is okay. So we must pave the road for them and help them to create the right process, and let them to work together with us to fix the process from the roots.
Thank you, Itay. Anybody else want to share some perspectives around mismanaged NHIs?
Yeah, I can add a bit. So we've seen earlier that those non-human identities, those secrets can be exposed in numerous places, right? And what will happen if an attacker will take one of them and try to use them to breach the environment? Basically, what will happen is what can he do with his permissions, right? That's the main thing. Now, going back to what we said earlier, usually developers are the ones who are creating them, permissioning them, and using them. And we will probably keep that process because security is all about enabling the business to move as fast as it can while keeping it secure. That's what security is all about, keeping it secure while the business is moving as fast as it can. And developers are trying to move faster and faster with the speed of code and creating those non-human identities and basically giving them a lot of the time admin permissions, because why not? It's easy. Let's give them admin permission, and we're going to use whatever the application needs us to use. So we're seeing all of the time non-human identities with admin permission that are only reading from a database, that are only doing small operations. So yes, right-sizing those permissions, because if that token will be leaked and if someone will try to use it, then at least it will be scoped. That's a huge misconfiguration and something that must be addressed.
Thanks, Itzik. I'll just close by talking about NHIs that I dealt with 25 years ago, dealing with SOX regulations that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. We analyzed some of our databases and we found 90% of the NHIs, plus some humans, were overprivileged. They had write privileges when all they were doing was read. So we reclassified them. 90% then dropped out of scope for SOX. A massive win, huge reduction in the attack surface area. So cleaning up legacy accounts, right-sizing permissions, again, are critical. Okay, I think we've just got a few minutes left. Some great thoughts from everybody. Maybe we've got time for maybe one or two questions from the audience.
Excellent. So thank you, everybody. Again, very shocking statistics, but no surprises, right? I guess my question is, I get the whole part around the organizational change, the preventative, detective, corrective controls, all the stuff, right? But considering, Lalit, I think you had the first slide on the GitHub secrets, how it's kind of blowing up year over year, right? Do you have any kind of nuanced approach on two dimensions, right? The first one is for organizations that are already in the middle of this problem, right? Is there a way or any design patterns to kind of quickly solve for it, right? And then secondly, for new organizations who are setting it up for the first time, any advice on, what they should do from the get-go? Yes, training is important. All of that is good stuff. But any, recommendations from the field on, what works, what doesn't work, right?
Sure. I think part one, for the existing where you have programs running, I think you have to go and scan your entire repository, identify where you have NHIs, cleaning up the excessive permissions. At times, inactive ones needs to be reviewed. It will be changing a tire on a running car, trust me. For the newer ones, it's same process, but you will have it a lot easier because to this gentleman's points, I think if you imbibe security by design and ensure that at an architecture level, wherever an NHI is required, you are analyzing what permission, how I'm going to rotate that NHI, at what periodicity, what kind of privileges we will give them, and have a good visibility into each one of them. So that's at a high level.
All right. So the authorization part of it, the revocation part of it, and the rotation part of it. Okay.
Okay, great question. I think we're now out of time. So I'd like to thank Daniel, Itzik, Rahul, and Itay for a great panel. I hope we didn't blow your mind too much and you've still got a few brain cells left to last for the rest of today's summit. So thank you all very much.